Hello, everybody. I toast to you and all you do. I hope you're having a fantastic evening. I hope that you're ready for the dark moon coming up. It's getting dark here. I thought I was going to be able to do the video without any light because it's still kind of light outside, but no, not enough light. It's still not quite light enough at this time. It's getting there. It's getting closer to the equinox. We're getting ready for that. It should be fun. It should be a year of new beginnings and all kinds of fun stuff. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I'm going to make a video about the equinox later. Today, I want to talk about magic. I don't know, these nighttime videos that I make, I feel like it's just like at a more appropriate time to talk more about the magical aspects and performing magic or doing magic or something about your practice. And so I had mentioned earlier about what are you doing to put your body into positive stress, to help it heal, to help it manifest, to help all of these things. And I had said that I was going to make a video more on this. So this is going to be one of those videos. I think there's going to be a couple, just because this isn't something that's just like cut and dry. Here's how you do it. So I read a book called The Wind is My Mother by now I can't remember. See, it's gone. Anyways, so I read this book. It's amazing. It talks about Native American philosophy and being a medicine man and what it took to get there and all kinds of different things. Well, somewhere in the book, he talks about how either his medicine man teacher or his medicine man had to, but the task was to go sit on an anthill and to just sit there. And in my brain, when I read this, I was like, oh my God, I need to find a shaman or a medicine man or a witch or a leader or somebody to tell me to go sit on an anthill. And it was really funny having that thought, because I really did think, I was like, I need somebody to tell me to do that. That's what I'm searching for. And this book I read, the first time I read it really early in my practice. I was probably 18 when I read it. And I was like, I need this. So my friends and I set out and we were like, we need to find somebody who's going to tell us to sit on an anthill. Or well, at least I did. They were like, maybe not that much. Maybe just find somebody who could like share their wisdom. And I was like, nope, we need somebody who's going to tell us these amazing activities that are going to really teach us. And that didn't happen. We actually ended up forming our own coven and lots of other things and learning in that way. But I could not find anybody to tell me to sit on an anthill. And it's funny now, so I'm saying that to you and I'm thinking it. And I'm like, why? Why did I need somebody to tell me? Why didn't I just go sit on an anthill? And that is a funny hang-up that we often find in the pagan community. We find it in ourselves. We find it in other people. We're always looking for validation. We're always looking for some external source to tell us, this is how you do it. This is what you need to do. And it's so funny because that's almost counterintuitive to the pagan notion of, the divine are within and all around. And this energy is something that you can literally connect with. Like, you can touch it. You can be with it. It's like a real thing. And you don't need somebody to validate that for you. You don't need somebody to say, hey, you need to learn to be at one with the earth, to just sit and be. So I want you to sit on this anthill, because if you're moving and crazy and stirring all over the place on the anthill, you're going to get bit by ants. They're going to be mad at you. If you go over there and you just sit and chill and be one with the earth and one with that energy, you'll be one with the anthill, and they won't bite you. They'll just crawl around you and do their thing, and you won't even be a blip on their radar because you are one with that energy of the earth. And it's that experience that's important, not that somebody tells you to go do it. So it took a really, really long time like, really long time. To get to the point where I was like, I don't need somebody to tell me what I'm experiencing. I don't need somebody to validate what I'm doing. It was funny going to festivals and fairs and talking to people and just hearing their experiences and their stories. The number one thing that I heard from all of them was you're not going to believe me, or most people don't believe me, or I can't believe you're not telling me that I'm crazy because everybody else I tell this to says that I'm crazy. And it was just really eye-opening. The first year I was like, okay, I can really see that people don't feel validated. People are scared to talk about their own experiences. People are intimidated by this. People are seeking that same validation that I'm seeking. Then after a couple of years, I was like, it gives a person so much power for me. This is a good thing. Gives people so much power for me to listen to them and to validate what they're saying. And to make it okay. When somebody's like, well, I saw a two-headed dog in my vision, and it seemed like a great protector, and it was this and that, and they're describing this visualization to me. They're like, I don't know what it means. And I'm like, well, have you looked into the mythology of the underworld gods? Have you looked into the mythology of, Hades and of, what is it? Arun? I want to say it's pronounced Arun. It's the Celtic underworld god who has the dogs. Not necessarily multi-headed, but in that there are more than one dog and they transform. It's kind of a similar, sometimes you gotta look past the literal. It's funny, I tell my 5-6-year-old son all the time, I said, just because we're not using the exact same words doesn't mean we're saying the same thing. And when you start to look into visualizations and things like that, you're not gonna... I've worked with Diana for a really long time. And when I visualize Diana in my brain, it does not match the paintings or the visualization, like the statues. I have a statue of Diana. It's one of the ones with the like gold on it, so she's kind of like, whatever, it's really not. It just, like, it has all of her representations and all of that stuff, but that's not how I see her. I feel like they always make her way too skinny. I see her more like Amazonian Xena warrior princess. Strong, powerful mother, who's not scared to walk with the wolves and the lions and the bears and all of that stuff. Oh my. So anyways, back to this whole validation thing. It gives people a lot of power to just validate, to say, you know what? Yes, I believe that you had that experience. I validate that. I have heard these stories before. I've had a similar experience. I have, and it's funny, in the reverse, and telling people about my own experiences, most recently I had... not recently, I guess it was almost a year ago now, but I was having some past life regressions. Not that I was like trying to do this work. I passed through a place where my past life self had been and lived and thrived, and this was my home. And so when I went, I had this moment, I had this flash. It was like this weird deja vu, and it was not like anything I could explain. It was amazing. Anyway, so after kind of going into that deeper and looking into this past life and kind of obsessing about it a little, because that I have that tendency when it comes to like, I started looking at pictures in the Library of Congress database. It's like, I'm gonna find this. It's a little prior to that. I'm thinking 1600s. But anyway, so when relaying this story to my coven members and the people around me, who I'm like, this was an amazing experience, and it was overwhelming. It was So all-encompassing that at one point I was having some, I would say, some minor identity crisis issues. Um, and it was an interesting experience. It was a weird place to be. It was just like, wow. So when I was explaining this to my coven members and I was talking to them about it, I got two very distinct, different responses. So from one, like dead silent, like I'm telling this story and I'm like, this is amazing experience. It was like all encompassing. I could feel this through my whole body. I could see the look in my lover's eyes, I still now like very vividly remember this face. I could see my grandfather. I could just different little things, and it was very, very powerful. Very powerful. And I'm explaining this with excitement to my coven members. One, I was on the phone, it's the first time, and I'm telling her, and like seriously, I get done, and you know that moment when you're like, you tell this, you're like, I'm about to get married. Because that's kind of like how I felt. Like, I just had this amazing past life regression. These are the kind of experiences that people are like, I want this past life regression experience. And just too funny. Like, I was so excited, and there was dead silence. Like, they didn't know what to say. They were like, okay. All right. I'm like, okay, cool. That sounds like a great experience. And that's like... And I'm so disappointed. I was like, oh, I don't know if they believe me. Like, it begins to send this doubt. Now, for me, this was a very real experience. There's no doubt in my mind. It wasn't like a guided meditation. Like, maybe I influenced this. No, I was driving in the car. Well, my husband was driving. I was riding along in the car, and we're coming down this valley. And, like, all-encompassing. Suddenly, I was not there in that moment. I was in other moments of like memories of my past life, very, very vivid, very like. And then later I was like, okay, I already did this, so I'm going to revisit this. I want to dive into this deeper, and it made it kind of easier because I'd already had that crazy connection. But I really like, the first person was like, okay, so that was disappointing. And however, I knew it was real, and I knew that this is what this was. It was just saddening to have someone be like, okay, like, pat on the head, that's nice. Now, my other coven member, who also happens to be my sister and is also a trained psychiatrist, whatever, she's got one of those medical degrees, she's a brain doctor, make you feel better. Anyways, I'm gonna laugh. I'm trying to get her to I think I subscribed her to the channel recently. She's gonna get a notification. She's gonna watch this one. She's gonna be like, oh my god. Anyway, so I told her, and she's like, so it's like your witchy coven sister friend, like, that is like the coolest experience ever, and how exciting. But as like a trained medical professional, I'm kind of worried about your mental health, and about some instability in your emotional state of being. Because there was one point where I really was like, I was getting mad at people. Like, why don't you understand the suffering of these people? And why haven't we done anything to make this better? And yeah, anyway, so that's a whole nother story. We'll talk about that another time. I don't have time to do past life and that. Okay, but so it just comes back to that validation. However, she validated me. Her concern was that I really did like compulsively spend about 4 or 5 days looking through pictures in the Library of Congress. I looked into the history and the everything that I could find historically. And it made some other things click about some, other experiences that I had and all of these different things. But because, like, my brain, like, took it to this crazy, like, my mania was like, ah! She was like, I'm a little worried, but it's okay. So we worked through that, toned it down, took a break, was like, let's let this rest for a minute. We'll come back to this. It's not going anywhere. But she validated what I was feeling. She's like, this is an amazing experience. Like, it is really one of those things. Like, when you talk to people and you're like, oh, I wish I had past life regression or memories from, this is what you were looking for. This is like it. It's like that epiphany moment. And validating that gave it strength. It made it easier for me to then go through and do that again and to come back to that. However, hearing the, like, silent, oh, okay, I don't know what to say to that, was discouraging. So I can only imagine, no, I know, as like an earlier in my practice and trying to talk about different things that had happened or experiences. You know, I've worked with the divine for a long time. I was a very spiritual child to begin with. Like, I was going to church by myself and doing that and trying to find God. And it was funny. It was the goddess who came to me first. And that's when I was like, oh, no wonder I've been having so much trouble connecting with God. And it's actually, so being that super spiritual person, I had a lot of spiritual experiences, and then people to be like, no, you're too young, or you're too this, or that's not possible, or that's not what Diana really looks like, or this or that. So it took a really long time to get to the point where I was confident enough in my own practice that I was like, I'm probably more practiced than most of the people because I really like experiencing my spirituality. And so to have somebody who's read a Scott Cunningham book, like, be like, oh, I've read one book, so I know you're wrong. Like, that's really not the point of magic, is reading that one, but that is not the point. Okay, so reading books is nice because it helps to validate what you want. It helps to validate what you should do. It helps to validate pushing you into a new place. However, it does not equate to having the experience and actually going out and doing that. And to me, it's as simple as, start with something as simple as calling corners. Okay? I imagine, it's kind of an old movie now, so I'll move my statistics down. I imagine 80% of all pagans, maybe not all, but most pagans has seen Charmed. And they've seen, I call to the watchtowers of the north. And all of them, they've seen this calling corners. We've heard this. We've seen it in books. We know it. But I've found that formal method of calling corners is often uncomfortable for people. They don't feel like it connects them with the energies. I know that as a coven, we worked at it. And we started with we call to the watchtowers of the north, powers of Mother and Earth. I evoke you to my space. Hello, Earth. I love you. You're always with me. We're not doing it magic. You can't say that. Like, okay, there's Earth. That's really formal. And it can be hard to connect with. And I think that when you feel like, oh, I don't feel like I'm connecting, I must be doing it wrong. And I talk to new people and I answer questions online, and people are like, I feel like I'm doing it wrong, or I feel like this isn't the right, like, where am I messing up? And really it's because you're not finding the right thing for you. You're not trying something new. You're not following your own intuition and listening to yourself. And okay, so that's why the most important tool as a witch, as a pagan, as a practitioner of magic is your intuition. You could read 100 books and still feel insecure. I read a bunch of Buckland books. I've got the Blue Witch, whatever. I've got the encyclopedia of this. I've got his books on Pictish magic and this and that. And I've read Gerald Gardner's first Aid to High Magic, which is not a magic book, but it is. Like, he hid all that innuendo. Like, this is how you do the magic. We just can't publish it like real. Which, reading that book, when I read it, I felt like I was... Because I understood the innuendos, and I was like, oh, I'm getting in touch with true magic in the way that it was passed before we were able to be like, hey, I'm pagan on the internet, and that's okay. Sorry, I just brought up a memory of him, like, yesterday. I invited someone to join the Peacock pages, and I don't think she was pagan, and she's like, how did you get my information? I was like, I'm sorry. Wasn't trying. Anyways, so, but even in reading all of the different books, I was like, this isn't right. I honestly dislike most of Buckland's books because he's so much like, you have to do it this way. Otherwise you're wrong. I feel like his books, like, he wanted to say that, and then he just was like, I'll just take that you're wrong part out. I'll just leave, you have to do it like this. And that's great if that's how you want to practice and that's the method you want to move forward in. However, when people feel like they're missing out on something, it's probably because you haven't tried something new. So try something new. Try something different. Try it a different way. Try a less formal way. You know, you can call it corners in any way that you want. You know, I call to the growing energies of Earth. Join me. It could be something like that. You could write a beautiful poem. It doesn't have to even rhyme. It could just be like, hey, Earth, come on over here. What, holla. Okay, if that's how you want to call the elements, then so be it. Like, that was, like, kind of fun. Like, maybe the next time I'm, like, in the garden working with magic, I'll call them like that. Like, whoop, whoop, come party up in here. You know, and I did magic with a large group of people. It was a more a chanty thing, like earth, whatever. I don't remember what I said now, but we did a more chanty thing, so it was more repetitive and less, like, whimsical or whatever. So that was easy for everybody to follow along. But you just have to find what works for you and try through that new experience. And you don't need somebody to tell you or to validate you. The validation comes from you and listening to your intuition. If you call corners and you sit in your circle and you're like, I don't feel a change in the energy, well, then your heart, your intention, your whatever wasn't present, and they were like, maybe we'll show up, whatever. But she doesn't really mean it. He doesn't mean it. It's whatever. That's not what you're looking for. So try something different, even if it's in just that moment. You know, some people get so caught up reading the book. You're like, oh, I gotta say it verbatim just like this, but you're spending so much time reading it out of that book that you're not feeling it. This really comes big for omens. I'm gonna have to, we're gonna talk about this. This will be the last one. And then, I know it's getting long, but anyway, so you see people all the time, they're like, oh, I saw this, or I saw an eagle, or I saw a thing. What does this mean? And you always have the people who are like, whatever, you saw a bird. It's a bird. But on the other hand, when you see something and it makes you stop and think, and you're like, I wonder what that means. It probably means something. Again, journal it, write it down, and then think about how you feel. I got caught up in a really long time on the whole, when I'm interpreting omens, the whole clockwise, counterclockwise. So, what kind of circle are we talking about? Are they crossing at the top of the circle or the bottom of the circle? Are they going left or right, top to bottom? What? I got crazy with it. Trying to make up like a scheme. What does this mean? The bird went from left to right, top to bottom. I need to know, okay? But I was getting so caught up in, like somebody said in one book, if it crosses your path from left to right, that means clockwise, and therefore it's like this. But then my brain was super analytical about it, and I was like, well, it's left to right at the top of the circle, but it's right to left at the bottom of the circle. So I don't think can conclusively say. Okay. Instead, I had to stop with the brain. Shh, shh. I have to tell my brain that a lot. Like, shh, be quiet. Don't talk. Feel. Listen. Experience. And that's where, mindfulness and being present in the moment and being able to still your mind, that's where that practice of when we do it in meditation, that's when it comes important in real life. Is when you're in that moment and you see the bird fly across your path and you're like, oh, I feel this. This is important. And then you take a moment to feel that. What does that mean? Did it make you feel anxious? Did it make you feel excited? Did it give you a good feeling? Or did it give you a bad feeling? What feeling, what energy, what presence came with it? And trust that intuition. Write it down so that you know. I was a kid the first time I crossed a dead snake on my path. I was like, I don't know, it's probably a bad omen. And it was funny because I was like 2 hours late from getting home, and I thought I was going to be super grounded and in a lot of trouble, and I saw the dead snake, and I was like, oh, I'm dead. Dead. My parents beat me home. For like the first time ever, they weren't late, and now I'm dead. So much trouble. Like, that's what I thought. And when I got home, my parents weren't there. I wasn't even able to, like, tidy up the house and, like, oh, I'm here, hey. And then my parents came home in a great mood. My mom had won money gambling. I was like, whoop, here's our money, and everybody's great. We're going to have a nice dinner. It was like whew. I was like, okay, the dead snake is maybe a good thing. When I met my husband, I met him online. And I'm headed to his house. And here comes this. The snake was long, almost as wide as the lane on the road. I had to swerve into where oncoming traffic was in order to not run over the snake. I think it was dead because it was just totally stretched out. I think somebody else had already run it over. It was very memorable. It was a really big bull snake. It was huge. It went all the way, and I was just like, whoa. And I met my husband, and after I was like, are you really how old you say you are? Because he looks like he's 12. But that was it. I was like, I knew it. I knew it from that moment. This is forever. Like, he's stuck with me. And it's been 10 years, actually, in a month. We've been married for 10 years. So 11 if you count our before we were married. But so it's crazy. It's just one of those things, like, you wouldn't associate a dead snake with good things, but every single time I've had a dead snake on my path, prosperous good things have come next. And so I put that on the list. That's what that means for me. If I see a hawk with food in its mouth, or a crow with food in its mouth that's landing near me, that means prosperity is coming my way. Eagles is on the right path. Woodpeckers is that I'm probably getting a message from the divine that I'm not paying attention to, and they're trying to knock it into my brain. But you have to pay attention. You don't read that in a book. That's not information that you get from somewhere. That's not information that other people can validate and be like, oh, yeah. Every time you see a snake, that's what it's going to be. I guess I could go see a psychic and they could validate, but would I really believe them? I don't know. You just have to learn to listen to yourself and trust yourself and feel that in yourself. And that's hard. Most people are pretty insecure when it comes right down to it, and we want somebody to be there with us. We want somebody to hold our hand. We want somebody. I just had the craziest epiphany. Anyways, you want someone there with you so that you're not alone, so that you have people to say, yeah, you're doing the right thing. That's the number one thing people miss when they come from being in a church. They're like, the only thing I miss about church is having all those people around to be my community. And the validation in that, and then yes, you're doing the right thing. Yes, this is how you do it. They tell you, and then when you do a good job, they're like, yay, good job. So you have to start listening to those voices in yourself. you have to start listening to your spirit guides, which I'm not going to lie. I just recently became okay with like actually listening to my spirit guides on like I'm not meditating. It used to be like I would meditate and then they would be really loud because they had been screaming at me for a long time and I wasn't listening. And then when I was like, okay, I'm going to meditate. Now I'm ready for my spirit guides. They would come and yell at me. Be like, I said! I'm like, I'm listening, finally. And then I would say over the last 2 years, have I really like, during the day, walking around, like hearing that, oh, okay, I get that. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Check this, listen to that, write this down, whatever it may be. And being okay with that. And I've been practicing as a pagan and a witch for longer than I would like to admit, because then you guys will, well, I don't care. I'm 36, so I've been doing this since I was 11. I dedicated myself to Diana. That's the first time she came down and was like, I'm here for you. What do you need? A hug? She gives the best hugs. And there's another thing that people are like, you get a hug from, that's like getting a hug from your imaginary friend. Like, it's really not, though. I've felt her kiss me on the cheek. I have felt her presence so physical that I would swear she was standing right there holding my hand. Like, right there. And those are experiences that you just have to, like, this is happening. And let it happen. And not let other people then later. I mean, I've had people be like, well, you might have thought you were holding the goddess's hand or the god's hand. I'm like, no, I could physically feel hands in my hand. So if it wasn't a divine energy, it was a spirit guide coming to me as a medium of that divine energy. But this is real. And it is real. Your experiences are real. So I guess I'm going to finish this off now that it's been, is that your experiences are real. And when you feel that realness, write it down for yourself so that you have that in the future so that you can validate yourself if you need to. But really, it's more about just believing and having that faith and saying, this is real. You know, I work with the fairies. I'm constantly having to tell people, the fairies aren't bad. They're not mischievous, evil little creatures that we've all been led to believe that they're so malice in their intent that if you work with them and you in any way, like, accidentally tiny step on their toe, you give them a flat tire, whatever, they're going to freak out and ruin your whole life. That's not how that works. They're not. They're just another magical entity. They're like little people with more magic than us. That's it. And they're amazing. And having to just, like, people are like, oh, don't work with the fairies, that's really dangerous. I'm like, no, it's really not. Those were some of the first entities that ever made themselves present to me as a small child. And you can't look at the outside world for validation. You have to come to yourself and feel that validation from yourself and allow yourself to have those experiences, both mundane and like sitting on the anthill and just relaxing your energy, but also in the magical and letting yourself see the fairies. Because if you tell yourself they don't exist